I'm thrilled to have Foday Mansaray, the Director General of the Petroleum Directorate of Sierra Leone, the PDSL. Thank you so much for your time. Just to get us going, could you just tell us a brief overview of your career in the industry and your work at PDSL?
I studied chemical engineering with managerial studies and a master's. Started working in 2007, started with Schlumberger. I've had a very long career with different institutions as a senior principal and chief process engineer. Total, I've worked for Wood Group or Wood Technip FMC. Mm-hmm. So I've had a few roles in my previous life. As a Director General, I'm an oil and gas man. I'm a complete oil and gas man. I enjoy being oil and gas man. So I took up position as the Director General of Petroleum Directorate of Sierra Leone just under 3 years ago. So in a few days will be my 3-year anniversary. And so it's been a fun ride. It's been an interesting ride. I mean, I took over during COVID. So as you can imagine, the industry then was sleeping. So we've, as a country and as a director, we've had to be very, very creative in how we promote the sector. When I arrived, most of the meetings and conversations with potential investors and IOCs was through Zoom, and as you can imagine, nothing beats a face-to-face. But then the world opened up about 1.5 years ago. We've been having meetings. Our strategies have changed and improved, and that's hopefully a brief overview of me, myself, my career, and how I got to the Petroleum Directorate.
That's a fantastic career. And when we look at Sierra Leone, how would you evaluate the success of the latest offshore licensing rounds?
I'm thrilled with what we did. So we launched in May 2022. We closed on the 29th of September 2023. So we've had numerous applicants. We've pre-qualified three players with a high caliber in the industry with extensive deep water experience. So after this event, we will start negotiations with all the companies that we pre-qualified. And we aim to complete that in a few weeks, and we aim to give license before the year end. So what we've done in Sierra Leone, we've looked at our processes and how to create a business environment that is conducive for international players coming in. We are a frontier nation still, so we understand that we need to reduce the red tape and bureaucracy. So from pre-qualification application to award of license, we've streamlined that process for it to take 85 business days, and I think a lot of people appreciate that. Wow. This is a very, very streamlined process. I mean, we can do that because the way we operate, we sit directly under the office of the president. So we're a nimble outfit. Decision making is quite quick. Yeah. Approvals are quite quick. So we do not want potential investors and IOCs in the basin waiting 6 months, a year before they get licenses. We're in somewhat of a rush to beat the net zero, the net zero drive, if you like. The less said about that, the better. So we work in with that speed and efficiency because one, we want to technically advance. Yeah. What we have, we're prospecting huge finds of oil and gas. We believe in Sierra Leone's basin we have 44 billion barrels of oil, in place, and recoverable 10 to 15 billion. Wow. And it's tremendous amount of gas. So we want to get to that. We want to get to that as soon as possible because that is what we want to use. One, to grow our GDP, and to transition, but transition justly. Yeah, we've got to use the resources and the revenues from oil and gas to transition. But I mean, what I must say to that is asking a continent to decarbonize that hasn't carbonized. So maybe allow us to carbonize first before we start to decarbonize. And if what we're prospecting comes to fruition, I mean, 10 to 15 billion barrels of oil is a great
Yeah.
It's a great find and great potential for the country. So we want to develop. We will develop oil and gas. But to answer your question, we ended the licensing round very, very strongly, very well. And as I said, 3 high caliber companies are pre-qualified. The names will be revealed once we get to an advanced stage, and we start to issue provisional licenses.
That's amazing. And I love your interest in how the progression is going. Do you find that there is also an interest from the investor side?
Well, to be quite frank, we've had to change our strategies. We've had to be flexible during the round because we've spoken to a lot of potential investors, a lot of big companies took interest in what we're doing. But I guess maybe allocation of funds into frontier nations may or may not be a priority for certain companies. So we've had to look at smaller independents. We've had to look at NOCs, and in the end, we got the strategy right in how we approach companies. But there's been a tremendous amount of interest. So we feel the climate changing.
Yeah,
it is changing. It is changing. If you asked me a year and a half ago, it was a lot more difficult than it is today. If you asked me 2 years ago, I would tell you it's almost impossible.
Yeah.
But world events change company strategies, and I think now we are at the stage where there's a lot more interest in frontier nations in drilling. We've got to drill more.
Yeah.
And I think in order to transition, I think IOCs or investors realize that we need to drill more wells.
Yeah.
And we have to drill more wells, and we have to drill more wells, and we have to drill more wells.
You mentioned the timing for the licensing is 85 days. How far along are you on this journey? And how competitive are the terms?
I would say we have some of the most competitive terms across the planet. So what we do ask for is we've got 3 non-negotiable terms. So we ask for 10% royalty in oil and 5% for gas. Corporate income tax is 25%, and there's a petroleum resource and rent tax. So these are the 3 non-negotiable terms. All other terms that we do offer in a licensing, like training funds, license fees, these are all completely negotiable. So how far are we in the process? So we closed on the 29th of September. So from the 29th of September, we have 85 business days. We start negotiations, so we are currently analyzing all the bids, making sure that we get a firm handle and understanding of the bids. And we know what we're looking for in terms of all the terms that we offer, like, I've mentioned the licensing fees, training funds, technology bonus, and the likes. And we see how that fits, how the bids fit into what we're thinking. If we're far apart, we'll meet somewhere in the middle. For us, negotiations is seen as it has to be a win-win for both parties, because we understand that investors are putting in capital. We also understand that we have a sovereign property that we need to develop. So we always reach a good compromise. I would say negotiation with any companies, we don't want to see take more than 5 days.
Yeah.
I think we can reach an agreement in a day or two. We really can, because we're not here to hold companies to a hostage, right? We want to make sure that we get the best deal for the country. And but I always say, what use is your resources if it's under the ground and nobody's developing it? So we've got to take that into cognizance and understand that the value of our hydrocarbons is on the surface. So whatever agreements we reach, we ensure, one, it is for the long-term benefit of the people, with an understanding that investors have to sustainably develop the resources whilst recovering, their cost and making revenue.
Yeah.
So, as I mentioned, I do believe that we'll reach an agreement and issue licenses to those that we will issue licenses to before the end of the year. So I want to put second week of December. So I'm tasking my team to work very hard in analyzing the bids and making sure making sure we reach an agreement. So we have all our draft agreements ready. The fiscal terms in the agreement is really what we need to, we need to have an agreement to or with. And the legal terms, which normally takes longer, there's a draft already. So all the potential investors, they know exactly, what we're looking for from a legal perspective. So any comments or reviews or non-objection, we'd expect for it to come. Once we reach an agreement with the fiscal terms, we'd expect them to have a no objection to our legal terms in no longer than 3 weeks.
That's awesome. And could you just share your perspective on the Nigeria-Morocco gas pipeline?
And the Nigerian-Morocco gas pipeline project.
Yeah.
I mean, it's an exciting project that Sierra Leone is part of. So we're part of the route, and at this stage, we've had several meetings. There is a meeting that's supposed to happen this month.
Yeah.
So I believe it's in pre-feed. So all the technical, some of the technical details have been discussed. Sierra Leone is part of the route. This is a project that is part of the start of energizing Africa, if you like. So, from our country's perspective, we will have the ability to tie into the pipeline whilst, with future gas that we produce. So, I must say, the only player in Sierra Leone's basin at the moment, they're prospecting tremendous finds of gas on their acreage, 8.2 trillion cubic feet of gas, on their acreage. So we use, we're hoping once this is developed, the Nigeria-Morocco gas pipeline will be a great conduit for our gas into Africa and potentially across Europe. But what we must ensure is obviously we need to move enough gas for ourselves to be able to use nationally.
That's true.
But it's a great project that seems to be progressing further. So as I said, we're no further with our second meeting this month, and we as a country need to start preparing and creating an environment for a successful project.
And my final question, what are your key outcomes? What are you looking to hope from this week at Africa Energy Week?
Africa Energy Week being, for me, the premiere of Africa Summit that focuses on One Frontier nations, producing nations like yourself, that gives countries like Sierra Leone the platform to sell. Sell might not be the best word to use, but to market Sierra Leone to the world. I think it has been able to being exposed to network, being able to network with potential IOCs.
Yeah.
So what we do plan to get from this is as the past Africa Energy Week is network, meet old friends, reconnect with old friends, connect with new friends. We need to, have conversations about how we justly transition into renewables. And I think this is the best platform for it, because the messaging that Africa Energy Week consistently puts forward, which is great for African nations, is just transition. And I cannot stress the importance of that, because, as I mentioned before, asking a continent to decarbonize that hasn't carbonized. I mean, Africa contributes to 4% or less to the CO2 emissions.
Yeah.
So to have a conversation about decarbonizing without putting the word "just" in there, I think it is unfair to ask African nations. So I think this is a platform that creates that dialogue for nations across Africa. As I mentioned before, with countries like us that are prospecting 44 billion barrels of oil in place, we need to be at the table to have the conversation of what it is that we do with all the oil in place.
Huh.
Do we leave it in there? Are you asking us to leave it there? It's a lot of revenue to leave in the ground.
Yeah.
For a country that that's not carbonized.
Yeah.
How do we transition without using the revenues from for what we know is in the ground? So I think the Energy Week puts heads together and players together to have a genuine and transparent conversation of how to justly transition, or how to develop the resources, the hydrocarbon resources that we have. So once we finish negotiations, Sierra Leone plans on having direct awards in the first quarter of next year. So again, it's putting that message across to potential investors that we are open to having conversations in the first quarter of next year, because we want to sustainably and efficiently develop our resources. So this is why we're here as a country to put that across and have conversations. But at Africa Energy Week is always a great event to attend. It gives us a very, very, very open platform to discuss and maybe have conversations without being too diplomatic in what we say, which we appreciate.
Yeah.
Because sometimes we want our voices to be heard and we want our concerns to be heard. And yeah, that's it.
Awesome. Thank you so much for your time. It was lovely to have you here today.
Pleasure. That was great.